Mr Speaker, and my question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his statement in relation to the partial sale of SOEs, that, quote, New Zealand investors would have to be at the front of the queue for shareholdings, unquote?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes. That was one of the tests I set out for the mixed ownership model that, quote, New Zealand investors would have to be at the front of the queue for shareholdings and that we would have to be confident of widespread and substantial New Zealand share ownership. Treasury's advice is that these tests can be met. In particular, there is likely to be significant demand from the likes of KiwiSaver funds, other institutional fund managers, Crown financial institutions like the Super Fund and ACC, iwi, and mums and dads who are looking for good, solid investments.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Supplementary. Given that the then SOEs Minister Tony Ryle said in 1999 that the sale of Contact Energy had been, quote, a great success, unquote, after claiming that 225,000 mums and dads had invested in the company, can we now conclude that that float was actually a great failure, given that the number of mum and dad investors has fallen by 2/3 to around 70,000?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no. First thing I'd point out, of course, it's a very different model back in 1999. The government is proposing, if it continues to be the government post-November 26th, to have a 51% minimum shareholding held by the government and then for New Zealanders to be at the front of the queue for the other 49%. But I do refer the member to a story written by Patrick Smalley in relation to Contact's Kiwi shareholder. It says, a loyal bunch. It says one of the least defensible criticisms of the key government's partial privatisation plans has been a regular reference to Contact Energy as an example of a privatised company which lost control to foreigners, yet nothing could be further from the truth. I could go on, but I think I've made reference to the article before in the House.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Given Treasury's advice that, quote, significant participation by foreign investors will be essential to achieve the government's overall objectives, unquote, can he provide the House with an estimate of the proportion of SOE shares that foreign investors will end up with owning?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, my estimates is that would be quite low for a number of reasons. Firstly, as I've said, we will be putting New Zealand investors at the front of the queue, and it's very likely, as Treasury's advice has said, that there will be huge demand coming from these areas. Treasury is working on ensuring that those tests can be met, Mr Speaker, and I'm confident that we will meet them.
The Honourable Rahui Katane.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, what assurances does the Prime Minister have that Hapu and iwi will be at the front of the queue for shareholdings in SOEs, and what progress has been made to this effect?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I can't give them an assurance they'll be at the front of the queue, but I can give them an assurance they'll be treated like all other New Zealanders.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
To the Prime Minister, how does he propose to prevent mum and dad investors from on-selling their shares in SOEs to foreign investors, which is something that Treasury has said will happen and something which clearly happened in the case of Contact Energy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I go back to what I said earlier. In the case of Contact Energy, the model was very different. Treasury is looking at that model, and there could well be a lot of examples. I think in Australia, for instance, loyalty bonuses and the likes will use.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Supplementary. Is the projection that $300 million in fees will be paid to lawyers, investment bankers and other advisors accurate?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I haven't seen that, but what I can say is the Minister of Finance is working closely with Treasury to ensure that the fee structure is low. I know that the Leader of the Opposition asked for some information from my office just this week in relation to basically what the fee structure was for Contact Energy. I'm sure the member's seen that, but actually it was 1.9% was the fee structure from the top of my head. That is very low relative to what we've seen in the private sector, where it runs anything up to 7, 8 or 9%. And Mr Speaker, well, these are billions and billions of dollars worth of assets. So Mr Speaker, my expectation is it would be low relative to what we see in the private sector.
Question number 7, Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.